Hey, my name is Marvens, and I've done over $4 million in DDC and BDB sales, and we just audited another seven-figure account that had the worst setup possible. They hadn't actually tested their form since 2020, despite actively running paid ads to their website. They haven't touched some of their core flows in the past year, and that was a really big eye opener for us. Despite auditing so many accounts and seeing so many different problems, despite them pushing seven figures, eight figures in revenue, we still, to this day, after the past 4 or 5 years, find these core issues that apparently a lot of people just don't see or they're just completely ignoring. So if you are an e-commerce brand and you don't feel like you're making the most out of your Klaviyo account or your retention channels, and you're doing all this work to actually push traffic to your landing pages to get people to buy, or you're spending all this money to push traffic to your landing pages to get people to buy, I'm going to be going over all the different things we use to audit brand accounts so you're able to actually see some of the issues that we actually see, and you can actually be like, okay, we need to actually fix this because we're spending so much time and effort getting traffic to our web pages, and we're also spending a ton of money trying to get traffic to our web pages, and we're not even actually converting these people properly. So I'm gonna be going over how we actually audit brand accounts in this video, and yeah. All right, so what do we actually start with when we're auditing a brand account? Essentially, it is forms. Forms are an automated sign-up form used to capture audience email and phone number. It's really that simple. When you're running paid ads to a specific landing page or a website, you'll have a form that pops up that gets those people to opt in. The reason why you want to have a form is because you have a conversion rate on your Shopify website or your WooCommerce website, whatever that is, and not everyone's going to convert, right? It's usually like a 1% conversion rate, 2% conversion rate for Shopify stores and stuff like that. When you have a sign up form on your website, on your Shopify, you're able to actually capture those people who don't actually, who are not a part of that 1 to 2% people who actually convert. What that allows you to do is capture more people into your actual, email list and convert those people down the line, right? So you have a let's just say 1 to 2% conversion rate on your Shopify website. If you capture some of the people who didn't convert within that, 99%, 98%, whatever that is, you're actually able to convert those people just like you were converting the people who are in the 1 to 2%. So really, really simple. These are just some examples of sign up forms that we've done. Chinook Cedar right here. Sign up and get 10% off. Unlock $15 off your order. This is another brand we worked with. 50% off your first order. It's really, really simple. Usually percent offs are just really like the go-to because they're really, really, really effective. But these are just some examples of offers that you can run within your forms. So you have a 10% off offer. You enter your email, you get 10% off. $10 off offer. You enter your email, you get $10 off. Free shipping over $40 as well. You can put that as well. And you also want to have like a secondary form for SMS as well. And usually you can go ahead and let's just say somebody enters your email for 10% off. You can actually have a next step, and I'll show you how you can do that in Klaviyo, where you can essentially collect somebody's email and they get like an extra 5% off or something like that. So that's really how you're going to optimize to actually get signups for your email list. It's really going to be the offer and the traffic quality that's going to determine the difference between like a 1% conversion rate versus a 2% conversion rate, or even like a 5-10% conversion rate, which we've seen as well for your sign up forms. That's going to be really the lowest hanging fruit. So typically you want to assess traffic quality. So whether that traffic's coming from paid ads, whether that's Google, Facebook, whatever that is, TikTok, and then you want to test that offer as that's basically the lowest hanging fruit. So essentially, you want to test like a 10% off, $10 off, free shipping over $40, unlock $15 off your order, stuff like that. You want to test, and you want to allow like about like 1,000 people to actually view your form before actually making any changes. So it's really hard to throw a random opt-in percentage as this depends on traffic. Like if you have 10,000 visitors a month at 2% conversion rate on your sign-up forms, it's only about 200 subscribers for the month. But if you have 100,000 visitors a month at 2%, it's actually 2,000 subscribers you get. So you really just want to optimize your forms to the best of your abilities to get that as high as possible. That's really your job. And like I said, the offer and the traffic quality is going to be the best, kind of just the best, way to actually test that and optimize it. The next thing I would test within a form would be mobile optimized and make sure that you're basically testing conversions on the welcome sequences since they're connected. So essentially, for number one, you want to basically make sure you're testing mobile versus desktop. Most of the traffic is usually going to be in mobile because more people are just on their phones. And then after that, you go into CTA testing. So like basically call outs, whether that is a sign me up or get 10% off for this one right here. This could be get your $15 off or unlock $15. This could be claim my 15% off or it could just be 15% off. This is what you want to be testing, but like I said, this is like what you test after once all the other options are exhausted because this isn't really the most low hanging fruit. This is just something you do after you have like something that's like working somewhat. and you want to just like optimize it a little further. So going back to this, make sure to test conversions in the welcome sequence too, since they're connected. So what I mean by this is we're moving to the next step, which is flows. When you have a welcome offer for 10% off, that's going to be in your welcome series. And with your flows, they're automated sequences used to convert subscribers. So you need to have a way to deliver this offer. Like when people opt in right here, how are they actually getting their 10% off or $15 off? Well, it's in the welcome series that's automated. It's an automated sequence that's going to send an email and or text to these people so they can actually get their offer. So in your welcome series, when you're testing these, you're not just going to test them in like the form section of Klaviyo. You're also going to want to edit your welcome series so that you have one that is giving that the 10% offer, and you have another one that's giving the $10 offer. So you don't want to like separate the two. It's always going to be like forms going into flows, at least for the people who are new to the brand and they're essentially opting in for the first time. And what I love about explaining flows is that it's really just a funnel. So if you go to, for example, go through the welcome series, this is where you're essentially going to get your first welcome offer. And then let's just say that person doesn't buy it and they exit this welcome series. You're going to eventually find it that it looks like a funnel, right? So it's going to look like something like this, where you have a site abandonment after the welcome series. So if somebody goes to your website and they leave your website, that counts as site abandonment. Then you go from browse abandonment. So when somebody views a product on your web page, let's just say that you have a product page, they're going to leave, let's just say they leave that product page completely. That triggers your browse abandonment. Then you have a cart abandonment, where essentially you have people who added to cart and they haven't actually checked out. They haven't actually gone to checkout. They just add to cart and they leave. Then you have checkout abandonment, where essentially they go to your checkout and they leave checkout. Then you have post purchase, where essentially they finally went ahead and made that purchase, and you want to basically hedge against all the different like buyer's remorse, different like objections that they might have after the sale. You want to basically make sure you handle all those different potential like concerns that they might have in the post purchase, and potentially convert more people, essentially increasing your average order value because they already purchased with you. And we find a lot of success in the post purchase in increasing the average order value by essentially upselling them and downselling them. This is just an example of that. So this is an example of a post purchase where we had people enter on day two, $3,490 right here. And then on the next email, this was actually a repeat buyer thank you email number 7, and we're still getting like $3,000 worth of of sales in the 7th email. So most brands won't actually go past like certain amounts of emails, and some of them might send like 1 email, 2 emails, 3 emails. You want to make sure that you're actually like paying attention to the data here and seeing that okay, there's actually a lot of people who are actually viewing our emails in email, like let's just say number 3. Let's add another email that really resonates with this type of buyer. And in this case, it was a repeat buyer, so these people are more loyal, and you're able to essentially cross sell, down sell a lot of things in that. So you want to view it this way as like the people at the top are going to be the coldest, like more at like the top of a funnel. Then you go more towards the bottom of the funnel where you have people who actually purchased. Replenishment reminder are just people who you want to basically hit people at a shorter time frame from the customer win back, because these are basically kind of tied together. The customer win back, we just view that as like you are giving them more time. Usually the customer win back time frame is like 60 days to like 75 days. With the replenishment reminder, we're trying to hit them like 20 days or like 2-3 weeks after they made a purchase. Just trying to get them to like, maybe like add a little bit more, because a lot of people, especially in my personal experience, you'll like buy something and you'll be like, oh, I should have bought a little bit more of this. This is what you kind of do in this section right here. And the customer win back, that's where people have actually exhausted their supply, and this is where you want to basically get them back. Last thing is the sunset. And as you can see, there's 9 core flows here. Before we used to do only 8, but the replenishment reminder has been too successful to not incorporate. With the sunset, this is where we're essentially incorporating list cleaning. So essentially, we use the sunset to clean people out who haven't been engaging with our emails at all, and they also haven't engaged on our website as well. So this is going to help with cleaning people out who are just kind of they opted in for the initial offer maybe, but they didn't actually make a purchase, and they just kind of just been like not reading our emails, not engaging with our emails, and we want to make sure that these people are cleaned out, because so basically most of these email platforms like Klaviyo, they're essentially charging you based on active profiles when those profiles aren't even active. So we want to make sure that we're cleaning these people out and not actually paying for people who have been in our emails for like a year and they haven't even checked out our website, they haven't actually checked out our emails. So that's really the gist of the form section. This is what we're looking at when we're in the audit phase of our clients' accounts. So the last thing we look at in brand accounts is campaigns, deliverability, segmentation, and list health. Now, with the campaigns, they are essentially manual emails or texts used to convert subscribers. You've seen tons of these if you're in any type of email list, to where essentially you're getting educational emails, promotional emails that involve sales, discounts, offers like that. You might get like a why us versus everyone else type of emails. This is what you're essentially going to use campaigns for. It's manual sends that you have scheduled out, or just like you just send out whenever you want, and you're essentially going to use this for like educational purposes, promotional purposes, basically emails that people need to get like right now or at this specific time. This is what you're going to use campaigns for. So everything your list needs to know about. With the deliverability, this is going to depend from brand to brand, where essentially you want to make sure that your emails are being delivered, and that's all going to show within your account. You can actually see that within your data that your emails are being delivered, or your deliverability is not as good as it could be. That's part of the audit section as well. Within when we're actually looking at accounts, segmentation as well. A lot of brands don't know how to segment. So, for example, a segment that's very very popular would be a 30-day engage segment, where you're basically emailing people who have only opened and or clicked your email within like a 30-day period. And you could make it more tighter by saying opened and clicked email within 30 days versus opened or clicked an email within 30 days. And that's also going to play a big part in your deliverability when you're actually sending emails. And that's obviously going to impact your list health, because if you have bad deliverability and you just keep sending, your list health is going to go down and you're just going to make your delivery even worse. And segmentation, if you're sending emails to the same people over and over and over again, they might get annoyed, and your unsubscribe rates go up and your bounce rates go up as well, because you're burning your deliverability, and that just makes a whole entire flywheel where essentially if your deliverability is bad, you just completely compromise your list health. So here are just some examples of flows and campaigns. So this is actually a campaign we did for a prospect. This wasn't an actual client. So Disco got bought out by a different company, and we actually got in contact with that company, and we were able to share this mock-up with them. This would be an example of either a flow email or a campaign email, where the idea here is just to stop putting harmful chemicals on your face. So this is kind of just the angle that they would essentially take, and this can be applied to a campaign or a flow. But usually, when you have like big sales or promos, you want to have this as your campaign and run that for like a set period. This right here was a real flow email that we had for a client, Chinook Scenery, and this was a welcome series email. So this is essentially opting in for 10% off, and essentially they would essentially get this email to get 10% off. We'd have their code right here. They hit shop now, it auto applies that code, and yeah, this is essentially us promoting the offer, because we want to lead with the offer. That's why the person signed up in the first place. When it comes to congruency, you want to make sure your offer, because that's the main reason why people sign up. You want to make sure that's at the front of your email, so they can essentially go straight to what they opted in for. And then the people who will stick around, they're able to learn more about the brand. They're able to learn about maybe key influencers for the brand, anything that they should know, like free shipping over $40, 10% off recurring orders, anything like that. You'd be educating them on the different offers that they get when shopping with your brand. That's really the key point. And then you have some testimonials right here, and this was Welcome Series 1 for this client. This is an example of another example of a client's email, and this was mainly a campaign. So essentially, 20% off on your next purchase. It's basically a betting company where essentially we are just highlighting the offer, and we are giving a little bit of education. Obviously, with certain brands, you want to be more visual with your emails versus other brands where you kind of want to be more copy heavy. But essentially, this would be an example of a campaign that we sent, and this would be an example of a flow we sent. Now, what I would like to do at my company is we like to essentially differentiate flows from the campaigns by using different design styles. So if you work with us, you actually get one template for flows and one template for campaigns. Still on brand, still really like within the brand guidelines, but we like to actually like differentiate. So the people who are essentially getting the same emails over and over and over again, they're not essentially getting the same exact like template. Like we actually like to differentiate templates, so they're not getting like design fatigue, stuff like that. So this is really what we look for when we're auditing brand accounts. We start with forms, and we go through the metrics there. We go through flows, see how many emails you're sending and what you're actually doing within these sequences. And then we go to campaigns and see how your deliverability is doing, your segmentation, your list health, and your campaign volume, anything like that we look at within your account. All right, so I'm in the W account right now. This is essentially how it would look within Klaviyo. When you go to your website section right here in sign up forms, you're going to click sign up forms, and you're gonna have to create a form right here. But essentially, when you do that, you're gonna have to choose your list. So when you go to create a list, or not create a list, create a form, you're gonna click right here. You can click on the templates, or you can start from scratch. let's just say I wanted to do this, I could choose my subscriber list and choose my SMS subscriber list, and that'll essentially link to the actual form. And as soon as you do that, this is what you're left with. When you go to email and SMS pop up, then this is essentially what you'll be looking at, right? You'll have it linked to your email list and your SMS list, and it'll be just like a template like this. Obviously, we saw other templates; it would look like that if you chose those templates, but this is essentially how it look. Then you go to text opt-in. This will be the SMS part of this, where essentially people would enter their SMS after opting into the email, and they can also reject the SMS as well. Then it goes to a success message. Thank you for signing up, and it'll essentially tell them to look for an email in their pop-up. You could change this messaging as well. But we're not going to be doing those in-depth things in this video. But this is essentially where you'd find the sign-up form section. Then for your flows, this would essentially be your welcome series. If we go back a bit, because we kind of skipped a little bit, if you go to your flows, this would be your flow section. And if you go to welcome series, where we just were, you could choose, obviously you'd have to create the flow right here. But I'm going through it as if I'm somebody who is auditing a brand. So you'd have some of this stuff already set up. You'd have like a set of flows and stuff like that. And we'd have to go ahead and choose the core 8 flows that we essentially went over. More like core, because like I said, a lot of these brands don't have like, stuff like this. It's like, just like we covered, it's really going to depend on your account, but a lot of brands are just missing a bunch of core flows, and we're just looking at it with what we're working with. So, welcome series, we'd essentially go through here. We'd look at open rates, click rates, placed order rates, and we'd also look at any type of like concerns that we'd see within account like this. Sometimes brands are only sending like 2 emails within like a welcome series, and that's really bad. But you might have times where the brand just has like their segmentation messed up. So like for example, profile filters, they might have things that are blocking people from entering and receiving their email. We actually audited a brand that was they're trying to do like around $1 million in a single year. That was their goal that they told us. And we went into the welcome series and we found out that they weren't actually giving the 10% off offer to their actual opt-ins, which is really bad because it's just you're opting in for something, you're giving your valuable information, your email and your phone number, but you're not actually getting what you opted in for. That's really, really bad, and it might actually scream scam to a lot of people. So stuff like that we're looking for within your any type of like flows you have already set up. We're looking at those. When it comes to brand specific flows, we don't do too much of that because that's just specific to your brand. And the lowest hanging fruit is really just those core flows that we talked about. The next thing we go over is the campaigns. So the campaign section is going to be right above the flows section on the side right here. And we're essentially going to do the same thing that we did for the flows. We're essentially looking at your open rates, your click rates, place order rates. And we're also looking at your campaign volume because a lot of brands just don't send a lot of campaigns, or they're sending too many campaigns and that compromises their deliverability. We're looking at all that stuff, and we're also looking at brands that send the same emails over and over again. That could be a really, really big issue because you're going to be marked as spam if you're sending the same exact email template, same exact emails to the same person. That's really, really bad when it comes to your email service provider and your internet service providers. They're looking at that stuff because it's like there's a code to every single email. They're looking at all this stuff and they're seeing that you're basically sending the same email over and over again, and that could be really bad. That's why we have like a bunch of different templates that we use. We differentiate flows and campaign templates. And we also use plain text and Klaviyo based emails as well within our designs. So we'll essentially be doing plain text emails, native Klaviyo emails. So essentially, if I created a campaign, we'd essentially be building out your campaigns or your templates within Klaviyo. Like for example, like create right here, we'd just be building it block by block. And then for other campaigns, we'd be using Figma, which is a design platform that we use. And in other cases, we'd be using plain text emails. So we like to differentiate it just to make sure your deliverability isn't like at risk. Right here in analytics, we go over to deliverability, and you'll be able to see your deliverability score. You could see that this is essentially telling you to do a never engaged segment. This is like we talked about segmentation, create a sending schedule. These are just some tips that would give you. It would also give you tips to actually make a sunset unengaged flow, like what we talked about. But essentially, these are just some of the things that we're looking at when we're auditing a brand account. But the main focus, the main takeaway I would take away from this video is we're starting by looking at the principles of the customer journey. So we're starting with where's that traffic coming from, how we're capturing that traffic through forms, how we're delivering that offer in the forms, which is in flows, and how we're actually using those flows and campaigns in tandem. As you can see with this arrow, it goes back and forth. It's because you're essentially feeding people from your campaigns to your flows. So when somebody sees a promotional email, they might not buy on that promotional campaign. Like if they see a promotional campaign, they might not buy from a promotional campaign. They might click on it and then abandon their cart, and that's exactly where we're essentially converting them in this abandoned cart flow right here. So it's really just looking at it from a principles and like fundamentals perspective as like a customer journey, rather than just looking at it as like, oh, we should build a form, we should build some flows. Instead, we look at the principles of what we're actually doing, of like what we're actually looking at, which is the customer journey. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of it. I wouldn't overcomplicate it. If you are a e-commerce brand that needs something like this built out, if you want an audit on your brand account, just like we covered in this video, there's gonna be a link down below to book a call, and you can essentially speak with me, and we can essentially get an audit ran on your account for free. And if we're a good fit, we'd essentially build all this stuff out for you: design, copy, strategy, etc., etc. So just click that link and book a call, and I'll see you in the next video.